"Can I come and join you, Daddy?" Sarah said. "Of course you can. I love it whenever you bath with me. And you know I usually need help with scrubbing my back," Mark said, looking back at Sarah. "I know exactly the kind of help you need," she said, smirking at him. Lisa Harper had always thought she'd built the perfect life. She and Mark had been married for nearly 20 years, and while they'd faced their share of ups and downs, they had weathered the storms together. Their marriage wasn't perfect, but what marriage was? When they adopted Sarah at just 1 year 6 months old, Lisa believed they had completed their family. Sarah was the baby Lisa had prayed for after years of infertility, a child she could pour her love into, even if she hadn't given birth to her. But as Sarah grew, cracks began to form in the picture-perfect family. Lisa had tried to ignore them, chalking up her discomfort to her own insecurities. Sarah, once a sweet little girl, became distant during her teenage years. She was rebellious, moody, and often dismissive of Lisa, turning to Mark for everything. Lisa consoled herself with the idea that Sarah and Mark had a close father-daughter bond. Wasn't that what she had wanted? A family that loved each other. By the time Sarah turned 22, Lisa's unease had grown into something she couldn't ignore. It started with small things. The way Sarah and Mark looked at each other across the dinner table, as though sharing a secret. The way they would suddenly stop talking when Lisa entered the room. Sometimes, Sarah would sit too close to Mark on the couch, her laughter lingering too long at his jokes. Lisa tried to shake off the creeping sense of dread. "You're imagining things," she told herself repeatedly. She wanted to believe her family was still intact, but the doubt refused to go away. It was always there, a low hum in the back of her mind, growing louder with every passing day. The final straw came one afternoon when Lisa came home early from work. She had forgotten her phone and returned to retrieve it, only to find the house unusually quiet. As she walked through the hallway, she heard low voices coming from Sarah's room. "Not now," Mark's voice said, hushed but firm. "But why?" Sarah's voice was soft, almost playful. Lisa stood frozen in the hallway, her heart pounding. She didn't dare open the door. Instead, she tiptoed back out of the house, her mind racing. What could they possibly be talking about? Why was Mark even in Sarah's room? That night, Lisa lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the scene over and over, filling in the blanks with scenarios she didn't want to believe. By morning, she knew she had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. A week later, Lisa put her plan into action. She bought a small, discreet camera online, the kind used for home security. When it arrived, she carefully positioned it in the bedroom she shared with Mark. She felt guilty for invading his privacy, but her need for answers outweighed her guilt. "Why are you acting so jumpy lately?" Mark asked one evening as they sat in the living room. Lisa forced a smile. "Just work stress," she lied. Mark shrugged and returned to his newspaper, but Lisa noticed the way he avoided her eyes. The camera recorded for 2 days before Lisa found the courage to watch the footage. She waited until Mark left for a business meeting and Sarah was out with friends. Locking herself in the bathroom, Lisa retrieved the camera's memory card and plugged it into her laptop. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the footage. For the first hour there was nothing unusual. Just an empty bedroom, the bed neatly made. Lisa began to feel foolish for her suspicions. But then, as she skipped through the video, her breath caught in her throat. There they were, Mark and Sarah, together in her bedroom. At first, they were just sitting on the bed, talking quietly. But as Lisa continued watching, her worst fears were confirmed. Mark leaned in and kissed Sarah, not on the cheek but on the lips. The kiss deepened, and Lisa's stomach churned. She wanted to look away but couldn't. She watched in horror as they undressed each other, their movements intimate and practiced. The laptop screen blurred as tears filled Lisa's eyes. She slammed the lid shut and dropped her head into her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The betrayal was too much to bear. Her husband and her adopted daughter, the people she loved most in the world, had destroyed everything. Lisa spent the rest of the day in a daze. She couldn't stop replaying the images in her mind. The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. How long had this been going on? How could Mark betray her like this? And Sarah? How could the girl she had raised as her own daughter do something so vile? By the time Mark came home that evening, Lisa had composed herself. She greeted him with a smile and kissed him on the cheek, though the sight of him made her want to scream. "How was the meeting?" she asked casually. "Boring," Mark replied, loosening his tie. "What's for dinner?" Lisa wanted to throw the frying pan at his head but forced herself to keep up the act. "Pasta," she said, stirring the sauce. Sarah walked in a few minutes later, her face glowing from her night out. "Something smells good," she said, grabbing a plate. Lisa watched them as they ate together, laughing and joking as if nothing was wrong. The sight made her blood boil, but she kept her anger hidden, knowing she needed to stay calm to carry out the plan forming in her mind. Lisa spent the next few days pretending everything was fine. She acted loving toward Mark, even initiating intimacy to keep him off guard. She chatted with Sarah as though nothing had changed, though every word felt like poison on her tongue. But inside, Lisa was falling apart. Her heart was a storm of rage, betrayal, and heartbreak. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't stop imagining the two of them together. Something had to be done. Mark and Sarah had taken everything from her. Now it was time to take everything from them. Lisa couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen on the camera. The betrayal cut deeper than she thought possible. Her husband, the man she had loved and trusted for decades, had been unfaithful. Worse, he had crossed an unspeakable line with Sarah, the daughter they had raised together. At first, Lisa thought about confronting them. She imagined yelling, demanding answers, forcing them to face the pain they had caused. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't matter. Mark was a master manipulator, always able to twist the truth to suit him. Sarah, still young and impulsive, would likely play the victim or try to justify their actions. Well, confronting them wasn't enough. They had to pay. Lisa's pain turned to rage, and soon rage turned to resolve. Mark and Sarah had destroyed her life, her family, and her trust. They had shattered the very foundation of her existence. If they thought they could carry on as though nothing had happened, they were wrong. Lisa began to plan her revenge. She started small, keeping up appearances. She smiled at Mark when he came home from work, laughed at his jokes during dinner, and kissed him goodnight. With Sarah, she made polite conversation, even pretending to care about her day. Every word felt like a lie, but Lisa knew she had to play the part until the time was right. Late at night, when the house was quiet, Lisa lay awake, staring at the ceiling and going over the plan in her mind. She knew it would have to look like a sudden crime of passion, something no one could predict. Had to be final, irreversible. One afternoon, Lisa drove to a hardware store in the next town. She bought a sharp kitchen knife, its blade gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The weight of it in her hand felt heavy, ominous, but right. She paid in cash, keeping her face neutral as the clerk bagged her purchase. Back at home, she hid the knife in her closet, waiting for the perfect moment. As the days passed, she acted as though nothing was wrong. Mark never noticed the way her hands trembled when he touched her. Sarah didn't see the coldness in Lisa's eyes when they spoke. The night before Lisa planned to act, she made Mark's favorite dinner: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. She even poured wine for the three of them, toasting to family with a smile that hid her growing fury. Afterward, Lisa slipped the knife under her pillow. As she lay in bed beside Mark, she stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Time was near. They destroyed everything, she whispered to herself. Now it's my turn. The silence of the room was oppressive, suffocating. Lisa lay motionless next to Mark, her fingers curled around the knife hidden beneath her pillow. Each heartbeat thundered in her ears, but her expression remained calm, almost serene. This was the night she had waited for, the night she would finally take back control. Mark stirred, his hand brushing over her bare shoulder. "You've been so quiet lately," he murmured, his voice soft, unaware of the monster he had created. He leaned closer, pressing his lips to her neck. "What's wrong?" Lisa suppressed a shudder, her jaw tightening. "Nothing," she whispered, her voice flat. As he moved over her, oblivious to the storm building beneath her calm exterior, Lisa's mind replayed the betrayal, the camera footage of him and Sarah, tangled in sheets, their laughter, their moans. The memory ignited a fury so hot it burned through her veins like fire. She let him touch her one last time. Then, as his face hovered inches above hers, she struck. With a sudden, vicious motion, she yanked the knife from under the pillow and plunged it downward. The blade tore through flesh and muscle, severing his manhood in one clean, horrifying cut. Mark's scream was animalistic, a raw, guttural sound that echoed off the walls. Blood erupted like a geyser, splattering the bed, the walls, and Lisa's face. The metallic scent of it filled the room, thick and nauseating. "You filthy, disgusting bastard," she shrieked, her voice unrecognizable, wild with rage. Mark writhed, his hands clawing at the sheets, his eyes bulging in shock and agony. "Lisa, what are you?" His words dissolved into a wet, choking gurgle as his body convulsed. But Lisa wasn't done. She grabbed his hair, yanking his head back to force him to look at her. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could destroy me and walk away?" She stabbed him again, this time plunging the blade into his chest. The sound was sickening, a wet crunch as the knife pierced his ribcage. Blood sprayed from his mouth, splattering her face, but she didn't stop. Again and again. The room became a slaughterhouse, the bed soaked in crimson. Mark's body jerked with each stab, his screams fading into weak gasps. His eyes locked onto hers, wide with terror and disbelief, until finally, they glazed over, lifeless. Lisa stood over him, her chest heaving, her hands slick with blood. She stared at the mangled, unrecognizable corpse beneath her. Blood dripped from her face, her hair, the knife in her hand. The smell of death was overpowering, but Lisa felt nothing but a cold satisfaction. She sat on the edge of the bed, looking at Mark's mutilated body, and let out a bitter laugh. "You always wanted Sarah's help, didn't you?" she muttered, her voice dripping with venom. Still holding the bloodied knife, Lisa called out to the hallway, her tone eerily calm. "Sarah, your father needs you. I'm here." Moments later, Sarah opened the door, her face pale with confusion. The second she saw the carnage, she froze, a scream tearing from her throat. Lisa stood slowly, holding up the severed, bloodied remains of Mark's manhood. "Oh, don't be shy, dear. He wanted you to make this harder for him. But I'm afraid I took that option away." Sarah's scream intensified, her body trembling as she stumbled backward. But Lisa moved fast, locking the door behind her. "You don't get to leave," Lisa hissed, her voice sharp as a blade. "You're part of this too." Sarah stood frozen, her eyes locked on the blood-soaked bed where her father's lifeless body lay. The metallic scent of blood mixed with the overwhelming stench of death, choking the air. Mark's mutilated corpse was sprawled across the sheets, his chest a mass of gaping wounds, and his severed manhood rested grotesquely in Lisa's bloodied hand. You're insane," Sarah screamed, her voice breaking as she backed toward the door. Lisa tilted her head, her face calm but her eyes wild. "Insane? No, Sarah. Insane is what you and your father did to me. To this family." Sarah turned to run, but Lisa lunged, slamming the door shut and locking it. "You don't get to leave," she snarled, her voice sharp and unhinged. Lisa advanced, the knife glinting in the dim light. Sarah grabbed a lamp, hurling it in desperation, but Lisa dodged easily. "Choose," Lisa hissed. "Do you want the knife, or shall I send you flying like the trash you are?" In a final burst of rage, Lisa shoved Sarah with all her strength. Sarah's scream echoed as she crashed through the third-story window, her body crumpling on the ground below. Lisa smiled. Justice. Lisa stood by the window, staring at Sarah's broken body, her breath shallow. The violence she had unleashed felt like a bad dream, something she couldn't wake up from. She had loved them both, and now they were gone, destroyed by her own hands. Tears blurred her vision as she looked at Mark, his lifeless form lying in the bed. He had been the love of her life, and Sarah, Her daughter, the girl she had raised. How had it all gone so wrong? How had love turned to this? The weight of her actions crushed her chest. The rage that had once burned so fiercely inside her had vanished, leaving only sorrow and regret. She had destroyed everything, believing it would bring her peace, but now there was only emptiness. "I never wanted this," Lisa whispered, her voice barely a breath. "I only wanted to protect us. I thought if I punished you, I'd be free of the pain. But I've only made it worse." Her hands shook as she gripped the knife again, the cold steel a stark reminder of the blood she had spilled. With one final tear, Lisa ended her torment. Her heart stopped, the darkness swallowing her.